Live text access, training for real-time intralingual subtitlers. Unit 6, Velotype, Element 3, Typing Skills. How to practice on Velotype and most accurate and rapid speech-to-text rate. This video lecture explains how to practice on the Velotype keyboard for written and spoken text in order to reach the most accurate and rapid speech-to-text rate. Firstly, we will look at how to practice written text, then spoken text, and how to improve your spelling and grammar. This is the agenda. We will first look at practicing written text with Velotype. Then we will look at practicing spoken text, followed by tips and tricks to improve spelling and grammar, and in the end, the summary. Practicing written text. Practicing typing written text is a good support for typing spoken text and vice versa. Also, when copying text, you need to copy all the text that is written, and you have complete control over how quickly you want to type. It is important to use good texts in the language you are practicing on Velotype in order to increase your speed. Nowadays, a lot of digital texts can be found online. At first, you should concentrate on typing texts which are simple. That way, you don't have to concentrate so much on difficult sentence constructions or the spelling of difficult words. And you can improve your Velotype combinations and splitting up of words correctly. For example, you could search for free ebooks for children. After that, you could search for texts or books that interest you. If you would use a book that you would normally also enjoy reading, this could be more motivating to practice your speed. And finally, you can search for texts that contain specific topics like news, economics, politics, medicine or law. In your work as professional intralingual subtitler, you will come across many different topics, so it is good to have a very broad knowledge of spelling of words. Besides this, you can see what is best for you, either to use digital text on your computer or a second computer, or if you prefer to have a hard copy of the text. But as always, try to keep track of the progress, so write down what you have practiced, how long, and the improvement of your speed. A good source for finding online texts is the Gutenberg project at www.gutenberg.org. When practicing the written text, certainly in the beginning, it is good to practice until you get it right the first time. Analyze yourself when you are typing and feel if some words are difficult to get it right the first time, or if you always make a mistake with certain words. You can decide you only want to continue to a next sentence if you are able to type the sentence without mistakes and without having to correct yourself. Again, don't look at your hands when you are typing. Best is to only look at the text, and if you think you make a mistake, look at the result on the computer. It is also important that you get a feeling when you make mistakes without having to watch the result. When you make a mistake, it is not very useful to repeating that one word several times. It is better to finish the sentence and start over again. And you should concentrate on your place in the text. When you are doing a speed test and you look back and forth from the text to the result, you will often lose the place where you are. It is good to stay focused on your text and only look at the result when you think you made a mistake. When you practice written text, you can use a metronome to filter out the difficult words or problem words, which you can then try to improve. First, you set the metronome at a certain speed, for example, 1 tick every second. Then you press 1 stroke with every tick of the metronome. It is important that even with easy and simple keystrokes, you stay in the same rhythm. That way you feel exactly which strokes are difficult to type and which ones are easier. When you feel a stroke is too difficult to type in the same speed, write this one down on a separate piece of paper. Later on, you can focus on those more difficult words and go over this list a number of times, so it will be easier for you to type them quickly next time. Practicing spoken text. As a first step of listening to spoken audio, it is important to use very easy and slow texts. That way you can fully concentrate on the typing of the keyboard and not having to worry about the difficulty of words or having to remember sentences. Since there might not be so many very slow dictations of texts online, you could ask a colleague or friend to dictate text to you at a very slow speed. Or, of course, you could make recordings yourself. If you want to record audio at a certain reading speed, you can do this by using marks after a number of words each time. For example, if you would mark every 5th word in a sentence and read those 5 words in 10 seconds, you will have a reading speed of 30 words per minute, which in English is around 30 times 5 is 150 characters per minute. If you are practicing in a group of students, you can share the load and make recordings for each other. The next step would be to find online audio, which is more difficult, or read at higher speed. You could browse the internet for free audiobooks. It would be good if you would have the written version of that audio as well. That way you could compare the results with the actual text. On the web page of Intersteno, the World Championship of Typing, you have an archive of texts and audio recordings in the different languages with which you can practice. The link is www.intersteno.org. There is also a repository from SCIC, which is the Department for Interpretation of the European Commission. The link is webgate.ec.europa.eu/sr/. Spelling and grammar. Here are some tips for improving your spelling. Even though these tips are aimed at the English language, the tips can also be applied to other languages. Use a good dictionary. Though memory aids are useful for memorizing difficult to spell words, good spellers never rely solely on memory. They depend on a reliable, up-to-date dictionary. Be consistent about British or American spelling. The key is to remain consistent in your choices throughout a single document. Always check certain troublesome suffixes in your dictionary. Some English suffixes confound even the best spellers. Make it a habit always to check these types of words when you are editing or proofreading your work. Create your own difficult to spell lists. Many writers and editors keep a list of words that they find difficult to spell correctly on or near their computer while they work. If you notice that you routinely misspell certain words, consider learning from your mistakes by creating your own personal difficult words list. Keeping this list close at hand as you write will save you time and probably eliminate many of your common spelling errors. Learn the standard pronunciations for frequently misspelled words. Some common misspellings derive not from difficult combinations of letters, but from pronunciations that do not reflect the word's spelling. Watch out for homophones, near homophones, and other easily confusable words. Many English words have identical or similar pronunciations, but different spellings. Using the wrong word of a homophone pair is one of the most common spelling pitfalls for all writers. Learn to check these types of commonly misspelled words carefully during your proofreading. Use your computer spell checker, but with caution. A spell checker can be your first proofreading tool for spelling, as it will catch any combinations of letters that do not form a known English word. But you should never rely exclusively on your spell checker, because it will miss many incorrectly spelled words that form another English word. A spell checker will not record who'(s) as a misspelling of whose, for example. Become familiar with English spelling rules. Contrary to common perception, English spelling does often follow certain rules. Becoming aware of these rules can help you avoid some common spelling errors. Many written handbooks and style guides contain a complete list of spelling rules. Below are 4 of the most helpful. Rule 1. I before E except after C, or when sounded like A as in neighbor or way. This simple rhyme helps explain the difference between the spellings of believe, I before E, and receive, except after C. In general, when the long E sound is spelled with the letters I and E, the order is IE, shield, field, fiend. Common exceptions are leisure, seizure, and weird. When the letters I and E are used in words with a long A sound, they are usually spelled as A, slay, faint, and heinous. When the sound is neither long E nor long A, the spelling is usually A, there, seismic, foreign. Some exceptions to this rule are friend, sieve, and mischief. Rule 2. When adding suffixes that begin with a vowel, able, ibble, oes, to words ending in silent E, drop the final E. This rule explains why a word like desire contains an E and A word like desirable does not. Other examples include response, responsible, continue, continuous, argue, and arguing. We do, however, retain the final E when a word ends in CE or GE in order to maintain the distinctive soft pronunciation of those consonants. Noticeable, courage, courageous, advantage, advantageous. For reasons of pronunciation, the final E is also retained in words ending in a double E. Agree, agreeable, flee, fleeing. Rule 3. When adding suffixes to words ending in Y, change the Y to an I. This rule explains the spelling shift that occurs in the following word pairs: happy, happier, plenty, plentiful, and body, bodily. As English spelling does not generally allow an I to follow another I, the Y is retained when the suffix itself begins with an I. Carry, carrying, baby, babyish. And rule 4, when adding suffixes, double the final consonant of a word only if any of the following conditions apply. The final consonant is preceded by a single vowel, bar, barred. When there is more than one vowel before the final consonant, the consonant is not doubled. Fail, failed. When the final consonant is preceded by another consonant, the consonant is not double. Bark, barking. The word has only one syllable or has the stress on the last syllable. Fit, fitted, commit, committed, prefer, preferred. For words with more than one syllable where the stress does not fall on the last syllable, the final consonant is not doubled. Benefit, benefited. Offer, offered. The suffix begins with a vowel, prefer, preferred, but if the syllable stress changes because of the addition of the suffix, then the consonant is not doubled. Prefer, preference. Final consonants are also not doubled if the suffix begins with a consonant. Prefer, preferment. If the word ends in I or PL or P, then the consonant is usually doubled in Canadian spelling. Travel, traveled. Worship, worshipped. Note, American spelling does not follow this rule. Grammar is a subject that stresses many students out, as it can be quite confusing and complicated. However, correct grammar is important for your writing and success, both as a student and as a future employee. It is thus crucial to know some simple methods to improve your grammar skills. Here are 7 basic tips to try. Even though these tips are aimed at the English language, the tips can also be applied to other languages. Read. Reading may be the #1 way you can improve your grammar skills. When you read, you reinforce correct grammar in your mind. It can be particularly helpful to read out loud, as the combination of seeing, saying and hearing assists in solidifying what you have learned. Get a grammar manual. It is useful to have a thorough reference book nearby that you can consult when writing. This way, anytime a grammatical question arises, you can quickly refer to the manual to obtain the answer. Review the basics. While classes in English linguistics and writing may not be something you are interested in, it is vital to spend a bit of time learning or reviewing the basic simple principles. Do some research on the basic parts of speech, as well as on the common grammatical errors people tend to make. Practice. There are many excellent resources, both online and in print, conducive to improving your grammar skills. A quick internet search will reveal a multitude of websites that offer grammar games and exercises. If you know that grammar is an area you struggle with, set aside a few minutes each day to complete grammar exercises. Listen to others. When instructors, writing lab staff, or writing tutors give you feedback, listen to them. Find out if you have a consistent issue with any topics in particular. Proofread out loud. Sometimes when we reread pieces we have written, our brain fills in the gaps of missing information. We do not always catch our own mistakes when we proofread. Reading what you have written out loud, preferably to someone else, is an efficient way to evaluate whether or not you have used correct grammar. And write. Just as it helps to read a great deal, it will also benefit you to write more. The more you practice writing with proper grammar, the more naturally it will become to you. So the more you practice on your VeloType keyboard, the better you will get at spelling and grammar. The summary. In this combined LO, tips and tricks were given how to practice your typing skills for written text and for audio, and how to improve your spelling and grammar skills. The exercises. The exercises for this video lecture are in the trainer's guide for this unit and in the PowerPoint presentation. All materials are available on our website www.ltaproject.eu. LTA Live Text Access, Universitat Autónoma de Barcelona, SDI, Internationale Hochschule, Scuola Superiore per Mediatori Linguistici, ZDF Digital, European Federation of Hard of Hearing People FHO, Velotype, Subti Access, European Certification and Qualification Association ECQA. Co-funded by the Erasmus Plus program of the European Union. Erasmus Plus project 2018-1-DE01-KA203-004218. The information and views set on this presentation are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the official opinion of the European Union. Neither the European Union institutions and bodies, nor any person acting on their behalf, may be held responsible for the use which may be made of the information contained here.